You know, we've all heard the story about the modern family, right? It's supposed to be this perfect partnership where everything is shared 50-50. But is that what's really happening behind closed doors? Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the biggest debates in sociology, the gap between the dream of a fair family and the stubborn reality of who's actually doing all the work.
Seriously, just take a second and think about it. In your home, who's the one who loads the dishwasher, keeps track of the laundry, or manages the chaos of the kids' schedules? This isn't just a personal question. It's the absolute heart of a debate that kicked off over 50 years ago and is still being hashed out in kitchens and living rooms everywhere.
All right, let's start with the optimistic take. Back in the 1970s, this really hopeful new idea started bubbling up. The idea that the family was on a march of progress, moving steadily toward perfect equality.
And the guys behind this big idea? Two sociologists, Michael Young and Peter Wilmot. After studying a bunch of families in London, they came to a pretty bold conclusion. A new, much more balanced family was starting to emerge. And they gave it a very cool name, the symmetrical family.
So, what on earth is a symmetrical family? Well, the idea is actually pretty simple but really powerful. Picture a family where the roles of the partners are basically a mirror image of each other. Both of them work, both of them do the chores, both of them are raising the kids. It's this vision of perfect balance.
So, Wilmot and Young boiled it down to three key things. First up, domestic labor, the housework and childcare, it's shared. Second, paid work is shared, meaning you've likely got a dual career couple. And third, and this one is huge, power is shared. It's not just about who does the dishes, it's about who gets the final say on the big stuff, like money or where you go on vacation.
But, you know, this rosy picture didn't go unchallenged for long. A sociologist and feminist named Anne Oakley was about to come along and deliver a major reality check.
Oakley came at this from a totally different angle. She argued that housework wasn't just a bit boring. It was isolating, it was repetitive, and it was unpaid labor that actually held women back from reaching their full potential. From her perspective, it wasn't a shared family activity, it was a trap.
And the data she collected? Wow, it was a bombshell. In her interviews with 40 housewives, she found that only a tiny 15% of husbands actually helped out a lot with housework. Meanwhile, a staggering 60% had low participation. That symmetrical dream? Yeah, it was looking more like a fantasy.
And this is a real gut punch. Oakley figured out that women were spending, on average, 77 hours a week on housework. Let that sink in. That's basically 2 full-time jobs, but with no paycheck, no holidays, and almost zero recognition.
This led her to coin a really important term, the dual burden. See, as more and more women were going out and getting paid jobs, they weren't exactly leaving their old responsibilities behind. Nope, they were now working 2 jobs, one at the office and one at home. This wasn't symmetry at all, it was just more work.
Okay, so Oakley's work just blew the doors wide open. It raised a massive question. If the symmetrical family isn't real, then why is this inequality so darn persistent? And this led to a bunch of different explanations from feminist thinkers.
And, well, the answers are complicated. For liberal feminists, it's all about outdated laws and attitudes. The solution is to change the system. Marxist feminists connect the dots to capitalism, arguing that women's unpaid work at home is basically a free service that creates the next generation of workers. Then you've got radical feminists who argue that the family itself is a core tool for maintaining patriarchy, male dominance, where something as awful as domestic violence is the most extreme expression of that power imbalance. And finally, intersectional feminists say, hold on, you can't just look at gender. You have to see how it overlaps with a woman's race, her class, her sexuality to get the full picture.
So while all those theories focus on these big structural forces, another perspective came along and asked a different question. What about personal choice? Some sociologists started to argue that, hey, maybe the picture is a little more complex.
This is where sociologist Catherine Hockham comes in with her preference theory. She basically argued that thanks to massive social shifts like access to contraception and more equal opportunities, women in modern societies now have real, genuine choices about how they want to live their lives.
So Hakim broke it down into 3 main groups. About 20% of women, she said, are work-centered. Their career is number 1. Another 20% are home-centered, choosing to prioritize family. But the biggest group, the majority at 60%, are adaptive. They're the ones trying to find a balance between work and family. So from this point of view, how the housework gets divided might be a result of these personal choices,
not just some big unfair social system. This slide right here really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It's this epic tug of war. On one side, you have the symmetrical dream, with its vision of joint roles and shared power. And on the other, you have the feminist reality, which points to the dual burden, the unequal power dynamics, and all that invisible emotional work that keeps a family going.
So this whole debate has been raging since the 1970s. It makes you wonder, right? Where are we now? Did that march of progress ever actually get us to the finish line?
Well, this timeline kind of shows how the conversation has evolved. You start with the symmetrical family in '73. A year later, bam, Anne Oakley hits us with the dual burden. Then, in 1995, researchers introduced the idea of the triple shift, adding emotional labor to the mix. You know, the invisible work of managing everyone's feelings and keeping the peace. And even as recently as 2008, research was still confirming that, yep, women were doing the lion's share of the domestic works.
So where does that leave us today? Well, the evidence still suggests women do more of the unpaid work at home. We also know money talks. The person who earns more often has more say, which can really shake up the power dynamic. What's really interesting is that research shows same-sex couples often have much more equal partnerships, probably because they're not stuck with traditional gender roles. But we can't forget the dark side of all this, which is that power imbalances in the home are still tragically linked to domestic violence.
At the end of the day, this isn't just a bunch of theories in a textbook. It's about the real-life, daily negotiations happening in millions of homes every single day. It forces us all to ask, in the 21st century, what does a truly equal family even look like? And maybe the most important question of all is, what's it really going to take for us to finally build one?